Welcome everyone. So today we're here to talk about the confluence, I guess, of artificial intelligence and the future of the GRC market. And I think specifically how the artificial intelligence market is influencing the GRC market and how to best think about that. My name is Anthony Stevens. I'm the author of a book that's been recently published titled Artificial Intelligence and the Future of GRC. And I'm also the CEO of 6Clicks. I'm joined today by Michael Rasmussen. Many of you will know is a renowned research analyst in the area of GRC technology. I really hope today's session will provide some interesting insights and give you some stuff to think about. In a nutshell, I think when I think about the artificial intelligence market and GRC market, it's a very exciting time, and I think more than ever will transform considerably over the next coming months and years, so in a reasonably short time. The format of today's discussion is essentially a fireside chat between Michael and I. So it'll be pretty free-flowing. We've got some structure, but through that process, no doubt, you may have some questions. Please feel free to put those in the chat. We'll endeavour to get to them at the end of the formal presentation and discussion. Otherwise, no doubt, we'll follow up on the webinar with a second session or other information that might be useful to you. So, Michael, I thought a sort of fun place to start for us today was for us to give a bit of a rundown about artificial intelligence in the context of other shifts we've seen with technology over the last 25 odd years. And of course, that's all within the context of GRC because that's the topic of today. But before we go there, I want to call out that when it comes to artificial intelligence, there's lots of folk out there that are truly experts in areas related to changes in the regulatory landscape around artificial intelligence, risk management methodologies around AI, the technology itself, venture capital investment, of course, and at all sorts of levels when it comes to engineering, data science, hardware, software. It's an enormous space, and I think everyone appreciates fully growing and expanding in all sorts of directions every day of the week or every hour of the day. But when it comes to the fusion of artificial intelligence and GRC technology and the current emerging expectations of risk and compliance professionals, Michael and I do that and think about that sort of problem every day of the week, and I think probably twice on Sunday, maybe not every week, but very often at least. And so I feel we've got some deep and genuine insights to share specifically on the topic of artificial intelligence and the future of GRC. And so that kind of brings us to the reason for the webinar today, which is to share those insights, some individual opinions on what's happening in the market, and that's going to shake out over the next year or so. And I think I can speak on behalf of Michael. We've certainly got, deep passion and interest in this space, both areas of artificial intelligence, which has been an interest of mine for many, many years. Hence the book that I recently published, and of course Michael's pedigree and expertise in the world of technology. So thanks very much for spending time with us in advance. So Michael, I'm going to sort of maybe open up and ask you to share with your expertise, as I think many refer to you as the father of GRC and have seen the evolution of lots of technology over the last 20, 30 years. If you could share with folk your perspective on the relative impact of what's happening in AI and I guess its impact on the GRC landscape compared with other shifts in the market over the last 25 years, be great.
Certainly, I'd be happy to do that. Now, we are in this fifth generation of GRC, which I call cognitive GRC, which is the impact of AI on governance, risk, and compliance, and moving into that future of what I call GRC 6.0, business integrated GRC. But in order to provide context, why don't we start at the very beginning? On a cold, snowy day in the Chicago office of Forrester Research back in 2002, February 2002, I sat through a vendor briefing that started to show this linkage of risks and policies and controls and all this stuff. I said, this is great. This is what I actually dreamed of when I was a risk and compliance consultant in the 90s. There's a market for this. And what do we call it? And so I put the label GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So that's why I got the acronym of or not the acronym, the moniker being the father of GRC.
Yeah.
And so in February 2002, I defined and modeled the GRC market. Now, let me just state, GRC is not something you buy, it's something you do. Organizations are governed, they manage risk, they manage compliance. I get frustrated when organizations come and tell me, we just bought GRC, now come and tell us how to do GRC. That's sort of putting the cart before the horse. Every organization does GRC already. It doesn't matter if you call it GRC, ERM, IRM, ORM, ABC, XYZ. Maybe you don't even have an acronym for it. But every organization has some approach to governance, risk management, and compliance, whether they use the acronym or not. The question is, how can you mature it? How can you make it more efficient, effective, resilient, and agile? And technology plays a key role in there. So in February 2002, I have what I call GRC 1.0. Now, I had a broad view of GRC, but what also happened in 2002 was Sarbanes-Oxley. So the first generation of GRC technology is what I call the Sarbanes-Oxley captivity of GRC, where everything was really centered on, focused on internal controls over financial reporting and Sarbanes-Oxley compliance. Then we entered GRC 2.0, which I called enterprise GRC. And this is more of my original vision for GRC, but enabling those second and third line functions, the back office of risk, compliance, audit, and security, and these to be able to work together collaboratively. And that was enterprise GRC. And then we moved into the era of GRC architecture, because in my coverage as an analyst, there's a lot of focus on a platform that tries to do everything on the enterprise GRC. And there's a core platform, and I firmly believe in that. But there's boutique systems and integration into ERP systems, HR systems, and content providers and stuff like regulatory change information and risk intelligence information. So it was about GRC architecture. How do we address this in an overall architecture where there can be a core hub platform out there? And I know you guys at 6 Clicks like to use that term hub and spoke. And so it was about GRC architecture. But then things had to fundamentally change. I was getting a lot of complaints on the legacy players in this space that had monolithic implementations that took years to get value, if they achieved value at all.
Yeah.
One that spent 3 years trying to implement a solution that finally went away from it. They had 0 users on the platform after 3 years. There's a LinkedIn post that I just love that's described one of the major GRC players' implementation to the lyrics of the song Hotel California, that they're stuck in it out. After $500,000 in software license, $2 million in implementation fees, 3 years later, they're just getting some basic functionality working. And so we entered the era of what I call agile GRC, that no code, just like what 6 Clicks does, that no code.
Yeah.
Now, no code means different things, but unfortunately, like any moniker, like AI or no code, everybody's grabbing onto this as marketing terms. And somebody puts a little bit of logic in a workflow and they call it artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
True artificial intelligence? No. No. The same thing with no code. There's code solutions that they call no code. There's no code solutions that are very rigid that you can't really adapt to your environment. And then there's solutions like 6 Clicks that are configurable and adaptable in multiple ways in complex environments that are quite interesting. But that was that era of agile GRC, and that's GRC 4.0. Now that's important now because GRC 5.0, cognitive GRC, is built on agile GRC. So agile GRC 4.0 doesn't go away, that no code solution. But we're in this era now of GRC 5.0. How do we leverage natural language processing, machine learning, predictive analytics, generative AI to make GRC, agile GRC solutions like 6 Clicks more efficient, effective, resilient, and agile? And the era of cognitive GRC is not about autopilot. It's about copilot. I don't know any governance, risk, and compliance professional in audit and risk and compliance, internal control, security, wherever it might be, that says we're sitting around with nothing to do. The reality is we can't get enough done. AI helps extend subject matter expertise. It doesn't replace subject matter expertise. It extends it, subject matter expertise, and makes it more powerful. And we're seeing a lot of very interesting use cases, things on regulatory change to keep current with all the laws and regulations, on risk intelligence to harvest a lot of risk information and help us build scenarios and forecast risk and predictive analytics, to leveraging generative AI to fill out, SOC 2 assessments and other third-party risk assessments. Again, it needs subject matter expert review, the final, but if AI and generative AI can do 80% of the work in filling that out, and a subject matter expert only has to do 20% of what they used to spend their time on editing and evaluating, that's great. And internal control management. I worked with a large European firm on their enterprise risk RFP. And when they got done at that, they moved into internal control management. And they at the time, this is going back during COVID, there was nothing on the market. Now solutions like 6clicks and others do this. But so they built it internally in one of their tech incubators. But this large global European firm, they wanted to be able to take natural language processing and things and machine learning and read all the risk and policy and regulatory information and write with generative AI the control narratives and descriptions, and then have that go into subject matter expert review. And once that was finalized, go into, again, natural language processing to read that final description narrative and leverage robotic process automation to be able to say who does the testing, when do they do the testing, how often do they testing, what do they test, and build that all into workflow and automate that in the environment. And there's so many interesting use cases for AI out there.
Yeah, it's a fascinating space. You've seen that journey evolve clearly, and I love the sort of methodology, the sort of 1, 2, 3 GRC right through to cognitive as you've just described. I thought I might just share, just for everyone, sort of a little framework's a little bit different, Michael, but I think hopefully the audience will appreciate a slightly different perspective on what I've seen in my career, thinking about technology shifts and probably, of course, GRC, but more generally many others. And that is what we saw. I break it down into kind of architecture and general design of the platforms themselves. And of course, we saw a lot of on-premise technology back in the 80s, I guess, maybe start around there, and into the 90s and then early noughties. And of course, there was this big push. I think some vendors are still going through it, but a big push to kind of shift that technology to the cloud, and the emergence of software as a service platforms, which of course, introduce different ways of consuming such software. And then I think we saw, as you described really well, this shift to sort of platform or fully integrated solutions, more so that have been, of course, cloud enabled and then made simpler through, as you described, the sort of agile and integrated GRC capabilities, be them no code, integrating to operational systems. And I think what we're starting to see in some areas, of course, it's where 6clicks focus is how do you then align that technology really effectively with the business models that are out there? And of course, we know that there are lots of different business models. Not all companies are just single monolithic, one single department, one single division. They've got multiple different stakeholders, business units, geographies, etc., around the world. So I think that's happened. But at the same time, we've seen what I call systems of intelligence, and not to distract us off topic too much, but a book Louis and I wrote about 8 years ago actually described this concept of systems of intelligence. I think you talked about it slightly different way, Michael, but essentially is the combination of user experience or a user interface, algorithms, and data. And I think, as most folk would know, you need kind of all three of those to make something useful. And through that journey, the likes of machine learning has been around for some time. Many folk think, of course, with what's happened over the last couple of years, that AI is a new thing. And as you said, Michael, you get this sort of AI washing that takes place. Anyone who's built some sort of little logic system calls it AI, but there are some much more classical definitions of what AI is, which I'll come to later. But there's machine learning, natural language processing has evolved, and now we've got generative AI, which is its own flavor of, sort of combining natural language processing with, of course, retrieval and generation processes. And then I think the final thing that I think, really we can't overlook, and I know you've talked about this a lot, Michael, is sort of the way in which the people use technology around GRC and the way they pay for it and where and how they extract value. And of course, back 20 years ago, people bought a piece of software and they took that piece of software to a big systems integration services business. They combine those two propositions together and away you go. You've got an outcome that, as we all know, that tended to cost tons of cash and take a long time. I think we've then seen, vendors, GRC vendors out there sort of saying, we'll do the services ourselves, right? We'll sort of combine our skill and expertise around our product to help customers get value. And I think what's starting to emerge is the software is becoming easier. It's becoming simpler. It's becoming more powerful. It's becoming easier to adopt. And as a result, companies can start thinking about consuming software really, really quickly, getting value out of it in a much more turnkey capacity. And then, looking to services organizations to help wrap managed services around for change management, for, other analysis, etc. So there's sort of the lens that I've looked at what's going on. And I'm going to come back to, in a minute, but sort of talking more specifically about artificial intelligence. Obviously, that's the topic of today, but interested in any thoughts you got there, Michael?
No, I think you're right on here and being able to leverage this and I love how you've shown some of the different shifts in the last year and what you have on the business models and things. But the big thing now, over and over again, is I find organizations focus on that value proposition and how does AI make us not only efficient, because that's a given in a lot of areas. I mean, if you print off, I'm told if you print off the FCA's, the Financial Conduct Authority's rulebook in the UK, it's a stack of paper 6 feet tall. Now I haven't put my printer through that, so I can't say I've done that myself. If you print off the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations and stack it end to end, it's longer than a marathon. And so that's a lot of paper to read, and that's not even counting like enforcement actions and all this other stuff. It would take, how long would it take you to read a stack of paper 6 feet tall and regulations and laws? Probably sure. But a machine can read that and process it and organize it and dissect it and map it in a matter of minutes. And so, yes, the efficiency piece of this is that AI makes things much more efficient. But I was talking to the chief ethics and compliance officer at a life sciences firm in the United Kingdom. And in their internal testing for regulatory change, not only did they find that AI was a gazillion times faster, but it was 30% more accurate in regulatory. Think about it. If you had a stack of paper on laws and regulations to read, I mean, we're going to think about, who's going to win the next Olympic medal in the Olympics, or what's for dinner tonight? Do we have plans for the holiday? And our mind wanders and misses things. A machine stays on task. And in this testing at this life sciences firm, they found it was 30% more accurate in the output. And then, AI can help us be not only efficient and effective, but also resilient. It can help us find those little things that pass right by us. The human brain's good at the intuitive, that right brain thinking, outside the box stuff. But the AI is really good at finding those little patterns and things that sort of fly under the radar that we might miss. So a lot of the predictive analytics and machine learning, there's power there in being a more resilient organization. And resilience is a huge topic, whether it's EU DORA, UK operational resilience, Australia CPS 230. But it's going to even be a bigger topic after the CrowdStrike issue 2 weeks ago event. So resilience is key. And how can we leverage AI to help us be more resilient? But then also, how can we leverage AI to help us be more agile? And so efficient, effective, resilient, and agile. And that agility is key because the business is changing. Laws and regulations are changing. Global financial services firms are dealing with 237 regulatory change events every business day. On the EH&S and ESG side, there's 296 regulatory change events every business day. That's a lot of legal and regulatory change around the world. So depending on your operations, some subset of that impacts you. There's changes in the risk environment, geopolitical risks, economic risks, and uncertainty, supply chain and commodity risk. but then the business itself is changing. Controls, policies, employees, processes, and then the modern organizations, the extended enterprise of third-party relationships, and they're part of your business, but you lack some level of control and oversight. AI helps us be agile to keep all this change in sync in ways that manual processes and just subject matter expertise alone cannot do.
100%. I thought I might just let's just jump straight into the artificial intelligence domain itself and unpack some of those. I mean, you've given some tremendous examples.
Yeah.
I thought
and I'm interested to hear about what you've written in your book on the future of GRC.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, I titled the book "Artificial Intelligence: The Future of GRC," and I guess the big question, and it's been posed to me quite a few times, is, why smash those two things together? Are you implying, I guess, am I implying that the future of GRC is going to be fundamentally changed by artificial intelligence? I guess the short answer to that question is yes, but I want to take a moment just to explain why I think that's the case, and maybe unpack on some of the examples that you've just given, Michael. But maybe a place to start is sort of think about if you and I were going out and setting up a new business next week and building a GRC tool, platform, piece of software, whatever you want to call it, I have no doubt that the approach and the opportunity that we would see using artificial intelligence would fundamentally would result in a very different outcome than most software that exists in the market today. I guess that's contentious, maybe a contentious point, but I'm pretty convinced that would be the case. But I want to explain why I think that. And there's a few areas that I think artificial intelligence really now provides that's different than anything that could be done before. And I break it up. This is referenced in my book, Michael. I'll just bring up maybe a couple of slides to unpack some stuff in a minute, but it's referenced in my book in chapter 2 around the practical application of artificial intelligence. But in essence, I sort of group them into 3 buckets. One bucket is what I refer to as user experience. And if we just think about the way that most software out there exists today, it's accessible via a web browser. People navigate with a mouse. They jump between different modules or menus or whatever it might be. But imagine just for a second if, that entire experience of engaging with the software could be done using natural language, not just to query and get a result like the ChatGPT style thing, but actually take it one step further and get, be able to action activity, be able to sort of kick processes off, to be able to get reports and analytics on demand, to be able to query things and get relationships established on the fly. That, I think, would solve one of the big challenges that exists in the market today around the use of GRC technology, which is adoption. And I'm sure you've seen that a lot, Michael, in your travels. People spend years and years and years to get the point at which they can do something. But then secondly, people get frustrated with, training, navigation, how to actually get stuff done. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity in just solving that problem. The second one is related to process automation, and that's a lot of what you described, the sort of case of being infinitely more efficient and delivering outcomes with higher levels of quality. So in the book I wrote, chapter 2 talks about the practical application, and of course we've done a lot of this stuff in our journey at 6 Clicks over the last 5 years, but focused on a number of the areas that you talked about, but things like compliance mapping, policy gap analysis, automated risk and issue identification, control definition, control mapping, all these sorts of things that, as you really well pointed out, require you to kind of maintain so many things in your head. And humans aren't that good at maintaining so many things at the same time and doing that on a really consistent basis that I think there is, ironically, Siri's just talking to me, doing that on a very consistent basis, saving tons of time. And the last thing, so that was process automation. The last thing is data insights. And I think, we're certainly seeing a situation where there's so much public data out there, be it in the world that 6clicks focuses on very much around cybersecurity, risk and compliance, be it threat intelligence, be it, risk alerts, being stuff that's happening in operational systems, so either within the organization or outside the organization, and combining artificial intelligence with data science or traditional data science and emerging data science, I think represents a huge opportunity to kind of say, at any point, you can use technology and kind of get insights that pull together stuff in the public domain and within your organization. And if you combine that with the idea that those sorts of services might be able to be consumed on a consumption basis, a bit like the way that you think about, ChatGPT, you buy tokens and you use those tokens up. I think the paradigm of the way this sort of software is built and organizations consume will change dramatically. Not just, of course, because I suppose the point I'm making is not just because of the technology, but also the associated business models that get wrapped around it as well. But if I just sort of jump over to move this slide forward, I do want to make a very important point, and I get asked this. I've sat panels and discussions with folk in all sorts of different areas of business, but I think we need to recognize that as much as from a marketing standpoint, artificial intelligence has clearly popped up in the last couple of years, and just about every vendor and technology provider is, as they say, washing their software with AI. To me, it has actually been a very consistent development of technology or tools and capabilities related to artificial intelligence over, pretty much 30 years. I can remember I was at university back in the early 90s, and we actually worked at that time with what you would describe as sort of machine learning capability that was emerging, looking at financial markets and stock prices and all that kind of stuff. Natural language processing has been around for 20 years, but these things kind of have layered on top of each other. And I think that it's almost like the analogy I said to someone the other day, it's a bit like a builder. Imagine before generative AI, a builder had a number of tools to build their house, including, wood, steel, bricks. But suddenly now, they've got those tools and they can build some houses, but there's a few sort of materials that are missing that really, open up the art of the possible. And I think using that analogy, the idea is that we've now got glass, right? So we suddenly, all of a sudden, this idea that we can see, we can get insights. We've got, this material that makes the house really start to come together and transforms the idea of what we think is accommodation. Is particularly revolutionary. So for everyone, I guess listening and with us here today, I think it's a really important point that although the marketing of artificial intelligence has hit the headlines big time over the last couple of years, it is very much, to me, an evolving area of computer science and one that will continue to evolve. And so I think having experience over an extended period of time in this space, as we've done at 6clicks, we started this journey back 5.5 years ago, right? It's not a Johnny-come-lately thing for us. And it does take time. You need research and you need analysis and you need experience in the world getting feedback. So hopefully that's an interesting insight. And Michael, of course, love your perspective.
No, I'm right on here. And I think what you presented was a interesting progression and the use cases. And a lot of times when I present on this, I talk about the use cases for natural language processing, machine learning, predictive analytics, generative AI. But I really like how you structured it around those three areas that bring these different aspects together into the UX, the process automation, and the data insights. Because a lot of times the AI use cases, it's not just about one category of AI, but
Right.
these different categories come together to
They come
solve those
together.
in UX, to solve those challenges in process automation, to solve those challenges in the data insights. I haven't had time yet, and I don't have a copy yet, but I'm eager to read your book. Uh,
You'll
Next
get
time we
one.
cross paths somewhere around the world, it gets you to
Yeah,
sign
yeah.
me.
Yeah, yeah. 100%. So I think that the sort of shifting on to kind of what are the things that, I think maybe people listening or with us here today might find useful that I've learned in terms of the way, and of course with your experience, Michael, um, that I've learned in terms of how to think about evaluating companies, or vendors out there in terms of their credentials and maturity around artificial intelligence. It's of course important for us at 6 Clicks to do that because we kind of want to obviously maintain a leadership role in that space. But I think it also gives anyone out there in the market a useful framework to say, first question is, do you believe that in maturing the GRC processes within your organization, artificial intelligence will have a profound effect? And if your answer to that question is yes, then I guess the question is, how do you find software and technology that has those capabilities today, but would also is also likely to mature in that area quickly and help you maintain the best possible outcome in your business around that. So we've developed a methodology and we make this available for free, of course, for anyone. And please reach out afterwards if you feel this may help you in your search for technology that makes sense. But just go to this. Actually, before I go there, just to highlight, this is the structure of the book. Michael, you'll get a copy, but the first one talks about a lot of what we've talked about today. The first part of the book I published talks about the transformation opportunity. Why are we at this point? Why is it so relevant to GRC professionals? Why is this technology going to be profound in its impact? Second one talks about actually case studies, real world case studies, real examples. Some of the ones that we've talked about today are broken up into 5 or 6 different areas, classical areas of risk and compliance, risk management, vendor risk assessment, audit, compliance and control management, and as I said, user experience overall. And then the last chapter, I think is really important because it describes what GRC professionals might need to think about when they're evaluating and thinking about the use of technology with artificial intelligence capabilities, everything from trust, reputational risk, data privacy, regulatory considerations, as well as things, for example, questions that we pose in the book that boards should ask. Have we thought about X? Have we thought about Y and Z? So there's a lot of things that I think are important around accelerating change. How do you sort of take all this information and actually make it mean something and be relevant to your organization? But back on the methodology framework, I've got a couple of slides here. I don't expect everyone to be able to see or read all the sort of notes on the page. As I said, please reach out to us or myself directly. Anyhow, we will publish this as a PDF and you share it. You can take and read it offline. But we essentially look at the GRC market and consider on the top line the maturity level of vendors out there and break that into sort of 4 steps. Non-existent, of course, vendors that have no capability in the space, are new to the areas of artificial intelligence and are, no doubt scrambling and thinking about how they can use that technology. Emerging, first signs of life appear and they're getting some awareness and doing some stuff. Evolving, they've probably got a team together. They're doing some stuff that's interesting, solving maybe some specific problems, and then leading, which is where they're actually thinking about artificial intelligence as a very core part of their value proposition and differentiation in the market. And then on the left-hand side, there's basically six areas: strategy and policy related to AI, the team and the technology, the way they think about text. And as we know in the world of risk and compliance, there's a lot of text, but then also the way they think about data, the way they think about insights and reporting, and the way they think about the user experience. And we've got a kind of checklist you can see here is the sorts of questions that you can think about and that might be useful for you to understand, where are those vendors in their journeys? And that's not to suggest you have to always find vendors that are, top right, so to speak. But at least it gives you a framework to evaluate, because I think, the artificial intelligence market and its confluence with GRC is moving so quickly that, it's incumbent on buyers to think about this as a very important consideration in their evaluation process. So,
Anthony, I'd love to just sort of interject here and
sure.
get your perspectives. We are in this like AI gold rush, and it's a big term. And you've got a lot of thought leadership in how you've approached this and how you've studied over the years, but how you applied it to 6clicks. I think when you look at your maturity model, one of the key themes is how is AI governed within the different GRC solutions and vendors when you're evaluating them? Because right now you run the big risk that somebody might be that they're leading at this maturity level out there, but they might have haphazardly put all of this together and just trying to hit the market demand and things, and it might not be delivering the right and accurate results. It might be a lot of smoke and mirrors. There's one reg change solution that I've described as, the Wizard of Oz, where there's the man behind the curtain, less AI than there is, traditional subject matter expertise. So any comments on what
I
how they
can
actually earn AI?
I can tell you, I can unpack that. It's a great question. Thank you. Let me put it this way. If you've got a GRC, if you're the CEO or head of technology, or you're running the engineering team of a GRC software vendor, and your boss knocks on the door and says, chop, 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 we need to jump on this, AI bandwagon. We need to get some stuff in the platform pretty quick. To your point, Michael, it's not difficult. It's not difficult at all to go and work with, OpenAI or a lot of the publicly available tools out there, smash it in alongside, a particular feature or capability in the tool, and, roll that through the development process. And no doubt weeks or months later, you've got something that you can point at that says, here's my AI capability. The problem is that, and I'm sure there's lots of vendors out there that do that. And you're referring to that, I think, Michael, the idea that how does one protect against those sorts of issues? I can tell you that there's lots of things that actually need to be thought about, and that are very relevant. We publish, for example, a charter. On our website, we have a whole dedicated ai.6clicks.com where we have a charter, we have policies. We think very carefully about data segmentation, and we think about what problem we're actually solving with the AI. The example I gave you before, what's going to happen is that, let's say that AI capability is generating a control definition, right? Let's just take a really simple example. You're going to be able to type into it, tell me the recipe for apple pie. And, the chances are it's going to come back, it's going to use OpenAI, and it's going to come back with a recipe for apple pie, which is clearly ridiculous and is a distraction. And so I guess the point is you have to think very carefully about how to put guardrails around the applicability of the technology, how to think about, data sovereignty and protecting the data that customers have got in your system, and how to use that responsibly with AI. You've got to have feedback loops so that when customers ask, or when people, users of the system, ask, questions that are, kind of not useful, not understood well, that you've got a process to update things. It's actually there's a hell of a lot more to getting artificial intelligence effectively working in any software than just simply plugging in ChatGPT or something like that behind the scenes. And I think it also comes down to a deep understanding of the architecture and the technology components that are used to build such systems. And it sort of goes to the point before, Michael, that artificial intelligence to me is not simply generative AI. It's classification systems, it's data science, it's the user experience. To give you an idea, the building blocks that make up the AI capability within the 6-clicks environment are numerous. It's like, numerous systems, all responsible for doing different things, working cohesively, and progressively being built out over time. But I think the methodology that I had up on the screen before would help, companies kind of evaluate exactly the point that you've just described. In actual fact, one of the points, I'll bring it up again, is, if we just look at, let's take this idea that, I think it's showing on the screen, the sort of, this idea that someone's just getting into it. They've released a lightweight integration with a third-party generative tool like OpenAI. That had put them in the, just getting going stage, right? They have non-AI engineers adopting generic publicly available AI capability. They use off-the-shelf tools. These are not things that are inherently wrong. They just lead potentially to a long roadmap and a long journey with that vendor, and potentially risks associated with where the data's going, how safe is it kept, how it's segmented between different environments. We get, last comment on this, we get customers asking us all the time, the artificial intelligence is the data that is in our account, in our environment, is that somehow shared with other accounts from a learning standpoint? And it's a good question. But short answer from our standpoint is absolutely it's quarantined, but a lot of vendors, I suspect may not have thought through those things just because they may be new to the game. Does that help, Michael?
Definitely, most definitely.
Yep. So I think we're sort of wrapping up, getting out of time to some extent. I did want to sort of maybe throw out a final question, but just everyone bear with me for one tick, and I'll just see if there's any particular questions that have come up. So Andy Bodier, let me just read his question through. What is the state of, maybe this is a question bit for you and I, Michael, but what is the state of AI-related GRC in the USA? What is the state of AI-related GRC in the UK and Europe? Where do I see most demand is coming 3 months in? Okay. So, Andy, I can answer your question by saying, businesses like ours, and obviously you would do your own research and talk to the likes of Michael, but, we have operations around the world. In actual fact, a lot of our sales and customer teams are based in the United States and the UK and Europe, as well, of course, Asia Pacific, which is where I live in Australia. But I'm sure there's other vendors out there that have got capabilities around the world. But Michael, it's probably a question for you, being the analyst, in terms of who you're seeing out there answering Andy's question, if you can see it.
Yeah. Gosh, now there's different ways to answer this. What is the state of AI-related GRC in the USA?
Yeah, basically the question is, what is the state of AI-related GRC in the USA as distinct from Europe and the UK?
I do want to say there is what I call cognitive GRC, which is the use of AI for governance, risk, and compliance, which is a lot of what we talk about.
Yeah.
But then a paper on this next area, it's what I call AI GRC. It's the governance, risk management, and compliance of AI and its use in the organization itself.
Yeah.
They're related, but they're separate things. There's the use of AI for GRC, and then there's a GRC of AI, the governance, risk, and compliance of AI, to make sure AI, however it's being used in the organization,
Correct,
properly governed to achieve objectives, managing the risk and uncertainty in its use, and acting with integrity in the ethical obligations of its use. So there's two things I talk about: cognitive GRC and AI GRC. Now, in the US, I see a lot of focus on the use cases in IT risk or cyber risk and third-party risk. That's where predominantly I'm seeing this in the GRC space. In Europe, I'm seeing a lot of interactions broadly on ESG-related areas, third-party risk, operational risk and resiliency. There's a broader perspective that I'm finding out of Europe than I do in the US.
Yeah. Michael,
There's
sorry. And Andy's just chatting. He's saying AI GRC is what his question refers to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, in that context, Europe's much further along with the EU AI Act, and there's a lot of focus on the governance of AI within organizations and compliance with the EU AI Act. And so, I'm getting a lot of interactions there. In the US, there's interest, but it's fragmented. There's interest in the federal government level with the Biden administration's focus there, but particularly in the insurance industry where I see the most focus in the United States, because you had the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC, with their model risk management rule back from, gosh, was that 2012, 2014? They've updated that. The draft was out last July, a year ago, and then it got finalized in January of this year, or maybe it was February. And so we had the AI model audit rule. And so each of the 50 states have to implement that into regulation. And so the strongest industry I'm seeing on AI GRC, the AI governance, is in the insurance vertical in the US. But it is broad, and there's a lot of US firms that have to respond to the EU AI Act as well.
Yeah, 100%. Another question we got is maybe we'll both answer. You can kick off, Michael, but Tony Ferris has got a question related to, I'll just read it out. What do you believe that AI won't eliminate or solve within running and managing your ERM GRC programs? I think, yeah, Tony's getting to sort of things that are not the software per se, but the running of your program. Michael?
Well, what do you believe that AI won't eliminate or solve? I mean, to me, it's not going to replace subject matter expertise. It's going to extend subject matter expertise. And to me, that's the big thing. I was reviewing one vendor's messaging, and I said, you have it all wrong because you're talking about autopilot, and it should be co-pilot. And people don't want to lose their jobs, and it's going to extend the subject matter expertise and allow us to get more done. Now, I think there's an intuition that AI just can't replace, that human intuition perspectives. AI might seem to have its own intuition because it can find a lot of fact patterns and things buried that just sort of fly by us that we don't see. But I think that there's a true human intuition that AI cannot replace. So I think AI impacts a lot of areas and helps us get 80% of the work done, but it's not going to do 100% of this stuff.
Yeah. I would just add, and I find that, one of the first questions that I ask when, talking to customers has nothing to do with the GRC requirements that they may have, but is actually to understand the business model and the nature of their business, right? And I think there's always going to be, it's really important for GRC professionals within organizations to understand, the way, the industry that they're operating in, what's important, where the sort of priorities overall are, and how, when they're running their GRC program, to best deliver outcomes in the fastest possible time. And I think that's got nothing to do with the software per se, but it's just the combination of the business expertise, skills, and perspective that they've got, and being able to translate to then say, okay, based on what I know of the company and based on the way that it works and the overall culture and the governance model, therefore, this is what I need the software to do. And then from that, you then say, well, the software's AI capabilities then help you be more productive, get insights that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to achieve, engage or interact with the software in a more effective manner, et cetera, et cetera. But that resource or that expertise to understand, sort of like a translation thing, understand the world of GRC and what's important from a process and execution standpoint, and then balance that with the way the organization itself operates and is structured and the culture, I think is critical to effective change management. last one, I think, Michael, and we'll see. Saurabh ask a question. Hi, what is the average timeline to implement AI-based GRC? Well, I understand it depends on the context of the organization's complexity, but can you take an example of a particular domain or case study? Yeah, I mean, look, we at 6 Clicks, Saurabh, we differentiate ourselves in the market for primarily two reasons. One is we build our platform on an architecture we call hub and spoke. The hub being a central risk and compliance team within an organization that needs to define standards, templates, libraries, etc., for use across their organization, is also responsible for, providing guidance and running analytics across the organization itself. And then the spoke being an individual division, group, team, subsidiary, acquired entity, portfolio company, who operate autonomously. And that architecture has been designed from the ground up and allows companies to roll our platform out very, very quickly, balancing the needs of different areas of the organization within different spokes. And we tend to set expectations with customers that that's done in sort of days or weeks. And, largely that's because the way the software is designed, but also our approach, the sort of functionality itself. We're not a, sort of deep, months and months or years of customization and complexity. We sort of, certainly design our software to be easy to use and simply configured and extended as required. I think the second component is the artificial intelligence bit, which is sort of very complementary, right? It means that when people then, once that design has been established, when people then start using the platform, there's areas of artificial intelligence that drive productivity benefits, and they're the ones that we've talked about today. So I think there's sort of two things. One is getting it set up and getting that set up aligned to the organization structure and design. And then the second thing is, once it's being used, how does it get used and solve problems for you quicker than doing things manually or in sort of traditional or legacy software? So, in both those fronts, that's we sort of try to manage and set expectations. That's done, really, really quickly. Obviously it depends on the organization and the scope and size, but that's certainly our mission as a business. Hopefully that answers it. Michael, did you have any closing comments or questions? It's been like the hours just flying by, and I've really enjoyed chatting about this topic, and no doubt we'll have a follow-up, I suspect, because seems to be lots of interest.
I'm anxious to get a copy of your book. How do people get a copy of your book?
Yeah, there's what we're going to do is we're going to send out a couple of things to everyone who's registered, because obviously with time zones, not everyone's joined, but we'll send a copy of the book. We've actually got website grcaibook.com. And I'll put that in the chat actually. Folk can go there, and you can sort of, obviously it's a book is available on, Amazon's and these sorts of things. But also, we've got sort of electronic copies and so on. So that's one way. Then we'll also send out that methodology framework Q&A thing that I think companies can, or people can use to sort of help them evaluate.
Yeah, and then I've got my blog, my website on GRC and AI, and my newsletter this week was on the 7 AI samurai of GRC. I went and saw Samurai in the 1954 classic, Japanese classic, and so my blog this week was on the 7 AI samurai of GRC.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very cool. Well, thank you very much for everyone's time. Michael, it's been great chatting with you again. I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and thanks for joining us today on a very exciting topic.